tell us about your position on Idaho launch and what Idaho launch is and where you stand on that issue. Would someone like to start with that? Senator Lent, you ready to go?
I'll take it.
Okay, go.
Thank you, Gary. Idaho Launch is a great, and let me just give you the short background, and that is that of all the ninth graders that start in the ninth grade, about 20% of those kids are not graduating from high school. We also know that 2/3 of our population does not graduate from college. And as we work with business and industry, they're telling us that the normal kids coming through, the high school graduation in my day, the workforce and the demands on the workforce were a little different than they are today in the digital revolution that we've come into. So what it does essentially is it recognizes the importance of something more than, something more than high school, but less than a 4-year degree. We put, I think last year, somewhere around $800 million into our higher ed. So the direction then is shifting back to how can we better prepare our youth so that they can have, it's very important, so that they can have a living wage. Kids graduating from high school today have an uphill battle and a struggle at best. So what we're trying to do is take that investment, and what it does from a I would say Republican point of view from the economy is, and by the way, this particular program was piloted for 3 years, and the advantage was just the numbers. There was over about 3,600 people who were involved in it. The average person coming in made $22,000 a year. After 1 year and the program, they were at $38,000. So we're trying to move that poverty level to a living wage and give them a direction and a course with knowledge, skills, and abilities that they can go on throughout their life. So I supported launch. I was asked by the governor to carry it. Senator Cook also helped greatly with that bill as well. I'm proud of that bill. I think it's one of the turning points in helping our students in Idaho utilize their education to gain a living wage and contribute back to society. And the end result is we have less dependence on social programs at the end of the day.
Anybody else want to tackle that? Senator Cook?
Yes, thank you. Maybe just to add on to what Senator Lent said, he talked about the going from $22,000 a year up to $38,000 per year. That really puts them in a position from being a social taker to a community giver, to taking part in the community, to be able to stop participating on the social programs, but to start paying taxes, to help out to the system. Also, as a software engineer, for the last century, the United States has been on the cutting edge. We have led the world in technology. But for the last couple of decades, you've seen foreign companies, foreign nations like China starting to take the edge off that and moving in a different direction. If we are going to be a free nation, we need to make sure that we are educating our people that we can stay ahead of the rest of the world and be a free nation. I just want to give you a quote here that I think kind of hits it home. Is James Madison said, "Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives." That is what Launch does. Launch is a game changer. It puts us in a different direction. It allows our kids to get an education and move this country forward. And so I'm excited about the Launch program. I think you'll see some great things come out of it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Representative Foreman?
I'll just briefly say I voted no on that bill initially in the House for a couple of reasons. One, we do want to help our kids be able to go to college. I'm more concerned about reducing the cost of college than paying for tuition. I was concerned that people who can't afford to send their own children to college would now be paying for college or a trade for those who could afford it. And so for that reason, and I respect my colleagues who made a different decision, I just have a lot of experience and recognize good policy in this spot. And for me, it didn't hit the mark. So I voted no in the House. I tried to work with the bill sponsor on the House side to get some of these changes. It also proposed taking money away from the Advanced Opportunities Program, which pays for dual credits for our kids in high school. Didn't succeed at that, so I voted no. However, it didn't have the votes to pass when it got to the Senate. And so the Senate got to work, and I know that Dave and Kevin were very involved in negotiating a second bill that did come in and fix some of those problems that caused me to vote no the first time. And so I voted yes on the second bill that fixed some of the concerns I had. But I agree it can be a game changer if the money is used in ways that benefit all of us as taxpayers.
Thank you. I hope all of you will understand many of your submitted questions on the same issue. I'm trying to consolidate those questions. I couldn't possibly read every individual question that comes up. So let's go to another issue here that there are several questions about this one, and that's open primary, or the whole issue of primaries in Idaho. Maybe would be a broader question, but open primary specifically. How do you feel about that? Anybody want to respond to that?
I'll start on that one. The bill started in the House, House Bill 138. It was proposed to move the primary that happens in March typically to May. That was going to be a $2.5 million savings for the state. I thought that was a good decision, and so I voted yes. It was only after that the state GOP came out saying they opposed it. It was 6 days after I voted that I received an email saying the state opposed that bill. I didn't know that at the time. And so I was in favor of it. Once there was concern about May versus March, we all signed different petitions to bring this back into session to try and get a primary back instead of a caucus. I'm not a fan of caucus meetings. If you're on a mission, you can't vote. If you're in the military, you can't vote. If you're working, you can't vote. If you have some mobility problems, it's tough. So I think I can say that all of us here support a primary, but due to a technical problem in that bill this year, we will have caucus meetings. So I'd encourage you to get to those if you can, and we'll take a look at that again, hopefully soon, and see what we can fix.
Anybody else wish to respond? Let me move to another related issue, and that is many of you have had questions on ranked choice voting. So my question to you legislators would be, how do you feel about ranked choice voting? Would you support it, or would you be opposed to that?
We're running out of time, so I'll just give you a quick answer. Is no, I would not support ranked choice voting. A good quick definition of what I heard is you continue to vote until the person that was supposed to win loses. I thought that was a kind of a good definition, but personally I don't believe in it. Thank you.
We had a bill that came across our desk in the House, and every one of us voted in favor of that bill, which was against ranked choice voting.
I'll just add, there's a really good study out from the American Enterprise Institute. Some people are supporting this because they feel like it will reduce or eliminate extremism. This study from the American Enterprise Institute says it will actually result in people who are further away from mainstream voters than otherwise. They assert it would not help with the polarization problem in our state or in our nation for that matter, and I oppose ranked choice voting as well.
I would join my colleagues in those words as well.
Okay, anybody else? I'm going to go back to the launch program for just a second. I received another question related to launch, and maybe we should address that specific question. Are there limits to where students can go with the Idaho launch money? And what are those limitations and why were they put in place?
I'll take that, and again, we're trying to be somewhat concise in our answers, but the launch program, originally the intent was it went to in-demand jobs. We had a hard time, they had a hard time, the Workforce Development Council, trying to decide how to determine what that was. They finally settled on numbers that came very objectively from the Department of Labor. And it was jobs that had a certain amount of openings in the state. As a result, it really expanded the number out that students could go to that they could use the money for. I've been talking with the governor's office that we need to figure out a better way to tighten that up to make it more specific to in-demand jobs. Currently, it's open, there's on the list about 250 jobs. An issue with that is it includes jobs that don't require any education. There's sales clerks and some other things on there. So again, the first time through, we're figuring out what the barriers are, but the intent is this focuses towards those primarily jobs that require something more than high school, but yes, less than a 4-year degree, and spend that interest and money in that point, in that particular point. So that's the intent. We're still working through that right now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to primaries again because there's another question here. So one of the questions is a little more specific about your position, open primaries versus closed primaries. Anybody want to take that one?
Sure. I'll be glad to. My thoughts on open primaries. I am a PCO, and I believe one of the jobs of the PCOs, precinct committee officer, sorry if you're not aware of that. When you go and vote in your precinct, and that's where you vote at. And so there is a precinct officer for each one of those precincts. Their job, at least in my opinion, is to go educate members of that precinct about Republican voters. If you're as a Republican, I would go out and educate you on Republican voters. It is not my job to tell you who to vote for, but to say, hey, here is the information about each one of those individuals that are running for office. And then it's up to you to make that decision and then to go to vote. So personally, I am good with open primaries. I think you have to educate, and I think you have to work, and that is what our country is worth doing. Our government demands you to work. We can set up all kinds of laws and rules and close things down and try to narrow it down, but it's like being a parent. It's pretty darn easy to make the rule and say, I said so, and that's it, go stand in the corner. But it's a lot harder to teach and help them to understand. I think there was once a great wise man that said that I teach correct principles and let them govern themselves, and I think that's where we need to be. I believe in open primaries.
Okay, we'll shift to another question. And there have been several questions on the topic of funding of higher education and the problem of social agendas in higher education related to that funding. So I'm trying to consolidate the questions that you all have asked. So does anybody want to respond to that? Representative Horman.
I'll take that one. Thank you. Is that loud enough? Maybe I better switch mics.
I think we want you to get the
Is that better?
mic clear up to your mouth. I'm trying to so they can hear us.
Thank you. Oh, it looks like I don't actually have the language here. So this has been an ongoing issue. We've seen in the last couple of months the problems at universities across the nation and the agendas that are being promoted. Idaho has not been exempt from that. So over the last several years in the colleges and universities budget, we have either, when we can identify diversity, equity, and inclusion or social justice funding, we've removed it. Additionally, in this year's budget, we put specific prohibitions against using state funds for diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice programming. They are literally forbidden by law from discriminating against anyone. for these reasons. And so I gave a little bit of a fiery speech on the House floor this year because we were facing these accusations again. But again, we have done what we could from the platform of the Budget Committee. If people in the legislature want more than something in the budget, then they need to run a policy bill. And I do know that someone is working on a policy bill for that this session. Additionally, the state board has forbidden DEI statements in applications for positions in Idaho at universities. So I think that's something where we've actually made some important headway here in Idaho.
Okay, let's move to a little different topic. There have been a few questions on the issues of property tax and how the state can help alleviate the property tax burden. Anybody want to take that one?
Sure, I'll start and let others add in.
Most of you are worried about money, and
Yeah.
Representative Horman is the one that deals with the money issues. So.
Hopefully you all got a property tax bill there this year that was lower than the one you had last year. That is a direct result of House Bill 292, which the governor vetoed, but we overrode the veto for the first time in 16 years, I believe. That hadn't happened for a long time, many years. But what that did is replace some of the funds that are paying for bonds and levies at the school districts. About $105 million went toward that, so that's not coming out of your property taxes anymore. We sent that directly to the school districts to compensate for that. The other one is the homeowner's exemption, or if you're a homeowner, you received a credit, and you'll see that line right on your property taxes. What we did, our sales taxes in the state have been growing. So we took a significant chunk of those sales taxes and applied them to offset property taxes. The state does not levy or spend your property taxes. That's cities, counties, and school districts and other small taxing districts. So we can't control that. But what we did do, because we recognized that that had gotten out of control, seniors, my aunt had to sell her home and move into an apartment because of property taxes. That's wrong. And so this is a step in the right direction. I think you will see additional work on that in future years. But this is a significant investment in Idaho school facilities and in reducing the burden of your home property taxes if you're a property owner.
Thank you.
I'll let you know also there's a lot of think tanks that are out there with ideas, and they come to us and we go and we all spend time on that issue, and we go and we visit with the chairman of the committees, and you know, the committees, they control what goes over to the House floor. So it has to get through the committee process, and sometimes the committee, if they don't agree on what tax bill, all the ideas we have will not move forward or change anything, and that's just part of how that works in the legislative process. We work really hard together, and then they'll come up with one big tax bill, and that's the one that came out this year. It took a long time in the session. There's a lot of us were like day one ready with ideas, and then that one came out, and that's the one that made the benefit this year. But every year there's lots of ideas and ways people come up with to think about, but not all of them see the light of day or move forward.
Representative Mickelson, you have a,
Yeah, I was
hold it real close to your mouth.
I was one of the members that serve on Rev and Tax, and so those bills have to originate out of my committee. For those of you who think that we maybe did it right or wrong, when you sit in the legislature, one thing that's interesting to note is there's 2 or 3 people that decided what that bill was going to be. So when it came before us, it was either up or down, and there wasn't going to be a different tax relief bill for property tax owners, because leadership and some people had worked on it behind the scenes. So it wasn't like we as a Rev and Tax committee had the opportunity to sit there and say, you know, this is my idea, it was what was presented to us, And it was an up or down type of deal. So to think that we had a lot of input about how that was all gonna shake out, we really didn't.
I might just make a quick comment. Folks, you probably wouldn't understand the number of bills that come. There are over 600 bills that comes before the Idaho legislature every session. It's an enormous task to try and keep your finger on those. Some of you have asked me about specific numbered bills. I'm reluctant to go there because I've been in their position, and after you deal with 600 bills, you can't remember the specific numbers of some of them. So I'll try to get back to those. Here's a question that takes us a little different direction. There's, here in Idaho Falls particularly, some people are concerned about the windmills. And there's a proposal to construct more. And so the question would be, how do you stand on this? Is there something the state can do to stop the number of windmills being built in the state? Or is there a reason we should stop that at all? I guess would be part of that question.
Well, I think the state can do some things. It's also a county siting issue. There was a big hubbub about a big project, the Lava Ridge project, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
That was over by the Twin Falls area, and those people fought against it, and I think that they have got it shut down. I met with some representatives of INL this week, and we made the comment about we really need to get the nuclear technology because it has probably the least environmental and the least amount of waste of clean energy. And specifically, if people drive down I-15, you'll notice these windmill blades that are coming up I-15, and they're refurbishing windmills, and then they're bringing them to some site in Montana. And I don't think all these environmentalists that are pushing clean energy recognize that sometimes there's a whole lot of waste with their clean energy technology. So I really think that before we just push, and there's a lot of subsidies right now in the solar and the wind on the federal level, not on the state level. There's a lot of subsidies, but we need to really take a good hard look at policies based upon all impacts from clean energy and make the best choices possible for our citizens.
Thanks. Anyone else? Senator Lynn?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a windmill fan, not a solar fan, I'm a nuclear fan. And the reason is because the data shows that it's the most reliable, most consistent, clean energy form that we have going for us. Right now in the United States, these small modular reactors, just looking at replacing coal fire plants that are aging out, there's over 300 possible locations in the United States that these small modulars, they could take out the coal plant, put in a small modular, and probably the first one that's going to happen will be in Kemmer, Wyoming. And we have a group in Idaho Falls and Wyoming, the Idaho Advanced Energy Coalition. So we're working with Wyoming and Idaho together to bring these new energy forms in. The one I'm really excited about is called micro reactors. And that's less than 50 megawatts. Instead of your small community running on a diesel generator, you'll be able to bring one of these in on a truck and plug it in, and it's really the future. Great opportunities for our community to grow as we develop these technologies.
So let me press on you just a little bit and see if we can answer the question, is there something the state can do to address this issue of windmills more than we have?
It becomes very difficult because if you place them on private property, that's a private property right. That's the problem. So if you own the property on foothills and you want windmills, it's really hard for the state to stop it. But we did pass a resolution, bipartisan, unanimous Democrat and Republican opposition to the Lava Ridge project. Who in here property tax or utility bill, your electricity bill went up significantly in the last 2 years? I do level pay, and our bill, Briggs is here with me, went up $50. There's 2 of us living in the house. As we pay for more expensive energy sources than we could get through coal, nuclear, we've got to get the cost down so we can get some base load clean energy. But that's part of why our utility bills are going up, because we're paying for far more expensive energy production methods, and that's a problem. So the ability of the state to stop it, especially on, the federal government owns 63% of Idaho, you know? Stop it on those kinds of lands or private property is very challenging. I haven't heard discussion of that. I'm on the Federalism Committee, and I also run an energy caucus, so this is something we've spoken about repeatedly, but I haven't heard of efforts to specifically forbid it that I know of.
I'll just add the one little thing to that. It was funny because with the Lavin Ridge project, they were really worried about the federal government coming in and using their infrastructure that Idaho did pay for. And they would put such a heavy burden on that infrastructure, and that's where we do have the power. We can say, no, you're not using our roads for this. They can go in on their own land and build their own roads and do that. But we were all unified in our opposition, and that was one of the ways every community around that area was opposed, including every delegate in the whole state of Idaho. And that was really a great issue. We were all unified on both sides of the aisle this year, and I was really proud as a whole state of Idaho that the whole team stood together on that issue.
Thank you. There have been several questions come in on the issue of libraries, pornography in libraries, protecting children. So I'm trying to formulate a question here that consolidates the thoughts. How do you stand on legislation that, I don't know what the exact word is, that would punish librarians or libraries for disseminating pornographic, what might be considered pornographic material?
I 100% oppose pornography where children can access it in libraries. There was a lot of drama over the bill, and those of us up here voted different ways, and I respect that. We all had different reasons. We heard from different people. But I don't think any one of us up here agrees that pornography or graphic depictions of sexual activity should be available to children in libraries. For heaven's sakes, we put it behind the counter at the convenience store, or we used to when it was printed. That's what House Bill 314 did, was say it can't be in a place that's accessible to children. So I know that there are people working still on this issue. Representative Ehart is one of them, and we will see additional bills to limit pornography, limit children from having access to pornography in public places.
I don't support porn given to children. I don't support porn in the library. However, I did not support Bill 314, the library bill, and I was very specific about that because we are punishing librarians that are standing at a counter that are checking out books. They might have 10 people in line, and suddenly that they're going to be charged for checking out a book that a parent, in a parent's view, is inappropriate. Well, we scream about parental rights, and then when it comes to libraries, we expect the librarian to be the parent. We need to also, that bill specifically had private right of action in it. We do not want private right of action. It's a game that the far right and far left environmentalists have used for years to bring about the changes that they want in environmental. Well, it's the same thing if the far right uses it in a way to basically punish little librarians or make it a bounty on librarians, so that if somebody decides they want their kid to go to college, they got to go and they can set up a book in the library for their kid to pick up, and then suddenly taxpayers are going to pay that bill. And I don't think people realize that when we're talking insuring libraries and insuring schools, that if they get sued and we allow this private right of action, it ultimately costs the taxpayers more money because their insurance premiums will be going up to be able to take care of all these private right of actions. Is there an appropriate way for us to handle those problems? Absolutely. I disagreed with how they were going to handle it in that bill.
A related issue, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one more thing. It was real interesting after the session that we had a really amazing civil discourse with the librarians in this region, from Pocatello, Bear Lake, they all came down, and they wanted to really hear our concerns about that issue. And the first thing that was said is that the narrative on that has been getting out falsely. There was no intent to ever ban books or to do anything other than move them in a space that was not accessible by children. And we wanted that narrative to be really clear because we didn't like it when they're spinning the information in a negative way. So we also wanted them to know that we're concerned and that they should partner with us in figuring out a good solution, what would be the best option. And they also agreed that, hey, they could have done a better job at that and that they hadn't worked. And instead of being adversaries, we work as a team and address the issue and solve the problem jointly. Then there's not so much division on the issue anymore.
A somewhat related question here, and several have come in on this issue. That's the issue of vaping, and what can the state do, or what should the state do to protect children, particularly from vaping stores and outlets and access to vaping paraphernalia?
Okay, so I actually worked on this bill with Representative Raymond and a couple of others, and I don't know if most of you realize it, but in the state of Idaho, we tax cigarettes, but we have no tax of any kind on vape products. And everybody claims it was a way for cigarette smokers to get off of cigarette smoking. And so they kind of came in rather quickly, and then nobody adjusted. And so what we looked at in the bill that we're trying to put together, that I'm not sure whether or not how we're going to bring it back, but that you would tax on an equitable basis vape products so that you don't have people that get away with we're taxing cigarettes but we're not taxing vape products. That makes no common sense. And especially when they're focusing their advertising and everything on getting children to vape, and we know vape is so dangerous to our children. So we're trying to figure out a way to be able to fix that loophole that exists right now between those.
There was some bills that passed that restricted the use of minors as well. I was talking earlier about the Millennium Funds, and that's exactly what we're doing in that project, is really working hard to reduce all substances, but there's a big emphasis on smoking cessation. That includes the adults in their lives. That includes a media campaign to really explain to the community, please don't buy these products for these kids. How are they getting them? They're getting them mostly from their friends and family. Really close peers who turn 21, they go buy them. The kids tell us this information when they survey them. They know. They say this is where we're getting it. So we're really emphasizing, hey parents, have better conversations at home about your values on this. Model that behavior. Plus, having access in the schools and in the community, after-school programs with parents that have had issues with that in the past, making sure we're offering them smoking cessation projects and programs that are evidence-based. So there's a lot of that. Escape the Vape. We're redoing some of the advertisements and how they were spending their money in the past, because we feel that wrapping a giant bus is okay, but it's not a good way to change behavior. So we're saying, let's reinvest your money in things that we know work in the prevention space, and that's really what that project will be about. And there's a hearing coming up on December 12th and for the Millennium Funds Committee, and you'll get to hear more about that if you watch that online.
Related question, why is Idaho in the position of opposing legalized marijuana for recreational or medicinal purposes? Senator Lack.
Yeah, we're the last states, huh?
The only state without it.
Personally, I have a hard time allowing something like that doesn't exist now to be another burden on our society. I was over in Laramie this last week, and I've really followed closely the Colorado situation. The pattern is essentially it's medicinal and then it's recreational. And it was interesting as I was watching the news from the Denver area, and they had people coming on saying, these are different programs. They had this lady on, and she was talking about how her program used to have 15% of the funding from marijuana revenues. And now it was down to less than 1%. And they were talking, well, what's that about? Essentially what they're seeing is that people they're going back to the traditional routes for marijuana, but now it's legal. They're not paying the tax, and the states still are left with the social issues that are a result of increased drug use. So I'm going to be against that, whatever we do, and not for it at all.
I sit in the vice chairmanship of the Health and Welfare Committee, which is where that issue goes through. And I said, as long as I sit in that seat, where I'm there, that will not move forward. We will block every attempt in Idaho, and here's why. We've allowed the things that are marijuana derivatives, or the base that has been done, the proper research through the EPA, or not the EPA, the FDA, sorry. And then they go through a process, research. They're pharmacist dispensed and doctor prescribed, and there's several different medications that are from the marijuana plant that are allowable, and that Epidiolex is one, Marinol, there's a couple others in Idaho. One that's a nasal spray that's designed for abdominal pain. So those, we've approved those because they have the research and as long as that's been done, that will be okay. But when you're harming the citizens, we cannot allow that. I worked in the state of Nevada. I worked that was my job, as the entire drug all the prevention, treatment. And when the first year they brought in the revenue, I think it was around $65 million. And in my position, we were putting out over $150 million of services to help the families and support things. Schizophrenia turned on. There's so many correlations. I could talk about it all day because that's what I do as a profession. I prevent drug use with teens and families, substance abuse treatment. I've worked in these fields for 30-something years of my career. So I've seen way too much to ever go into a place where I'd be okay with Idaho going down that direction. I'm really proud when I go to national events and we show up as one of those states that they're like, yes, they're still the holdout state, and we don't want to spend more tax money on all the programs that it would require just if we allowed that. So I'm really passionate about it. If you ever want to talk to me deeper, then I'd be happy to do that and go on a deeper level, but that's just a basic overview for right now.
Okay, we're going to shift gears. Our time's getting short, but there have been a few questions come in on the issue of school bonding for building buildings. So I'm going to try and formulate this as a question that doesn't let any of you off the hook. I've been blamed for letting you off the hook. I'm not trying to let you off the hook. So the question is, first question, would you support lowering the threshold to pass a bond from 2/3 majority to something less than that? And if not, why not?
I'll start with that. I alluded a little bit to it in my introduction, but the answer to the first question is yes, I would support it. I have been in a group this summer. We meet about every other week talking about what that legislation would look like. We've tried to look at what Montana has done in that sense, but I think you will see this year a bill being written and brought forward that addresses the supermajority issue related to school bonding. The second issue, I'll just very quickly say, we're working on another process. If you're familiar with school bonding, there's something called bond equity equalization. There's a couple of ways there that we're working to bring more money. Again, we're trying to utilize our growth as a state and bring that back in to reduce taxes to benefit the people who are already here versus adding more taxes. So the growth of the state comes back in 292, goes directly back to the taxpayer, which you saw this year, and then we're also reinvesting in infrastructure at school facilities with that money as well. So there will be legislation this year again bringing forth related to reducing the reliance on local property taxes for school facilities as well, which should help that bonding issue for districts.
Anybody else wish to respond there?
I have always opposed lowering it. I think that it should be a significant, a 2/3 majority. If you're going to raise property tax, it should be a supermajority. Now, if we could change to a state like Oregon or Washington, hear me out, they have requirements that 40 or 50% of the people have to vote in any election if property taxes are going to be raised. I had the research done by our research arm. In some bond and levy elections, it's literally fewer than 100 people making the decision to raise property taxes for the whole school district. I don't agree with that. So there is a circumstance where I would agree to that, but it would have to mean a lot of people would have to come out and vote in favor of that.
So let me follow up then. Would you be in favor of a threshold of the percentage of registered voters that have to appear to make the election valid?
I have a bill drafted to do that very thing.
Anybody else?
And that is the model that Montana uses. Its percentage of voters who turn out during the election really affects the majority required to pass. That's the Montana law.
Senator Cook?
I just like the idea what you brought up, and I'm for that, and I've heard what Senator Lent and his group has been working on, and I'm for that. We're Republicans. We need to do a better job about getting out and voting. And if we get out and have a greater number of voting, then yeah, the percentage of the people are voting for the bond, then do it. And so I like the road that Representative Harman and Senator Lent are going down.
This issue is a little related, and I'm not quite sure how to formulate the question because I have several here, but the issue of buildings generally, can the state help build school buildings without so much reliance on property tax and bonding?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just answer. The answer is yes. We do already. What we're working on now is to increase the participation from the state so that local districts have less reliance on local property taxes. So we do that now, and we're trying to increase that margin as well. And you'll see legislation this year related to that.
Okay.
And I also think some of the talk that's gone around is that the state would have a blueprint model for, if you need a grade school, then they would have a model for that so that they could cut down on all the engineering and architectural costs and things like that for local schools. So if the local school says, we're now to the point we've grown X amount, we need a new school, then this would come into play, that they would have this blueprint for them that would bring down those costs.
A related educational question, how do we address, well, the specific question is, what are you going to do about the teacher shortage and the shortage of qualified administrators in the state of Idaho in our public school system?
We have increased school funding over $1 billion during the time that I've been on JFAC. And do you know what's happened to the teacher retention rate with all those investments? It's still about 9 or 10% that leave. No matter what we do, that retention rate is very sticky and really has not changed. So the state has poured on the coal to this. We've increased $380 million this last session, 145 of it for teacher salaries, 100 million of it, just shy of 100 million for classified salaries. And it seems like no matter what we do, we still have approximately the same amount leave every year. So we actually overproduce teachers in certain areas. We don't have enough physics teachers, we don't have enough math teachers, but we have typically more than enough elementary school teachers. And so it's a sticky problem that we have invested heavily in trying to change that outcome, and it really hasn't changed yet. But there are, I think, exciting efforts underway to try and reduce the cost of becoming a teacher. You might have heard that some of our community colleges are talking about offering a bachelor's of applied teaching. Well, then you can become a teacher for $20,000 instead of $80,000 if you go to a public university, a four-year university, and have to pay for room and board and all of those things. So one of the ways we can do that is by keeping the cost of obtaining a teaching degree low so that people can afford to go in. At the average salary in Idaho right now for a teacher is $59,000. So we have bumped that up significantly. And I think there are other policy levers that we need to pull to make it affordable to go to college and become a teacher. Thank you to teachers that are here. I know it's tough duty. We all have tough jobs some days, but the legislature has made tremendous investments in supporting teacher salary.
A related question has to do with school choice and educational savings accounts and that whole broad issue of school choice, parental choice, and where students go to school. So I guess the question is, where do you stand on legislation that specifically grants greater school choice?
All right, that's a great question. So we're gonna have to keep this kind of short because we're getting long.
Yeah.
I support school choice, but I have to remember, the way I explain it is, my neighbor lady who's a widow down here, I have to ensure that the money, her tax dollars that are going to education are accounted for and valuable to the system, to those students. So I think we'll see legislation on ESA, education savings accounts this year, maybe something related to taxes and savings accounts. So if you're not aware, this whole concept, it has to do with the money that's paid in taxes following the individual student in some way and not directly going just automatically to the school system that they live in. So it's variations of that we're looking at. We will see legislation this year, I'm sure of it, related to this in some form. But I will add this to it. We've worked really hard to evolve our education system. I think in Idaho Falls alone, we have 10 different options for parents. When I was on the school board at District 91, we worked really hard to create more options, and one of those options was Compass Academy. It was an option for parents and students. We're trying to find the best fit so that your students and the students in our area can excel that right situation. And that requires a lot of change and a lot of difference in how we think. Very quickly, the issue of retention. I am a proponent of significantly reducing the regulatory requirements associated with our education system. Let our local education schools, let them specialize, let them involve, and let the teachers become more enriched in their process, become more a part of that education process. I think that will help us all the way around.
I have 5 children, and all 5 of them are different personalities, as many of you that are parents know how that works. So my kids have been in all kinds of programs. I've had some in online school, some in the public high school, a couple graduating from Skyline High School, some in charter school at one time. And my daughter, who's turning to be a freshman next year, is looking to go into this new school that's being put into Idaho Falls called Elevate Academy. So they all have unique techniques and ways of educating kids, and so I'm a big fan of having opportunities and choices for our families to go to.
We have one last question I'm going to ask you. Our time's running out, and I don't want to weary any of you. But this one's one that's come in, and we need to address it. So the question is, do you support the idea of Article 5 convention to change the Constitution of the United States?
So is that to have a convention of states? Is that what the question is?
It's the convention of states concept, yes.
All right. I looked at that, studied it, and was like, oh yeah, we need to do that. However, as I started looking farther and farther into it, deeper and deeper, I don't believe our country is set at the point that we can open up the Constitution and be able to stay within the guidelines and change it like we want. And so for that reason, I think you need to have a nation that can work together, and we're not there right now. We are so divided right now. And when that changes, then my mind might change, but right now I am against opening up the Constitution, so I'm against Convention of States.
Anybody else want to respond at all?
I'll just say I'm in the same place. I continue to meet with them. I continue to listen. but I haven't heard anything yet that assures me we won't have a runaway convention that does more harm to the Constitution than good. I will continue to listen, but I'm not there yet either.
I will continue to listen. Certainly, we understand that the federal spending is out of control. And one of the main reasons to do this is to somehow get that back into force a balanced budget at the federal level. And I get emails on both sides of this, very strong, pro and con. But at this point, I'm still studying it, looking at it, and so I don't have a particular position on it other than I'll continue to look at it.
Okay?
It'd be nice if Congress would limit their own selves and their with term limits, wouldn't it be? and do what Idaho does. We do balanced budget so amazing in Idaho because we have to. We have to keep it in this Constitution. I wish the federal government would do that and follow that. And so if we could find a way, a different path that we don't have to mess with our Constitution. Our Constitution is the best document in the world. It's not always perfect, but it's the best document in the world. Yeah. And we need to uphold that.
I'll vote for that.
Or write a book about it.
I'll write a book about it. I did.
Oh, wait, you did.
Oh, wait, I did. Okay. All right, one last comment, and then I'm going to ask each of you to take about 1 minute and just share any last thoughts that you have. We're at 8:15, and we've kind of decided in our mind that that would be sufficient to give you a chance. Some of you have been concerned about the fact that we haven't had a more open dialogue. I hope all of you would understand that with this size of a group, that kind of open dialogue would probably not serve any of us that well. You're certainly welcome to come up and talk to each of the legislators after this meeting and get perhaps a more pointed response to some of the specific issues that they've addressed. Let's have each of them take about a minute and share any closing thoughts that they want to, and then we'll adjourn.
I guess since I had to start, I guess first I'll finish first. I want to say that one of the greatest things that I've learned is what a tremendous asset different people are in our legislative body, that different people have different strengths and have different experiences that bring real good insight into legislation. And so we rely on those people that are experts on those different committees to help the rest of us that maybe have a different understanding and have different expertise. I hope that as we go through our next legislative session, we will continue to work together, that we will have civil discourse, that people can have conversations without ripping each other apart, and recognize that we live in an awesome state and a fantastic community, and we need to build on the strengths that we have within our communities and within our state, and to continue to work for the future of Idaho. I think all of us have children and grandchildren, and we want the future to be bright and robust for future generations in Idaho, and I will work to ensure that.
Thank you, Representative Mickelson.
As Representative Mickelson said, we all have our specialties. If you want to know anything about water, come and talk to Representative Mickelson. She will put you to sleep in a matter of minutes. She is very good, and it is an important part of Idaho, and we need good legislation, and she does a great job. And I think as you look across each individual here, each of us bring a different thing to the table. And I think you've heard tonight that we don't all agree on each other's bills, and we see different things and we learn different things, and that is the great thing about America, great thing about Idaho. I am very humbled to serve Idaho. It has been one of the greatest humbling experiences of my life to be able to go and each morning walk across the street to see the Capitol building there and think that I'm representing you as Idahoans. I appreciate those that have reached out, that have emailed, that have texted, called, and made your comments, whether they were good or for or against or tell me I'm terrible. I appreciate the dialogue, and I hope that will continue to do so. So thank you.
Hello? Yes, this is the good one. I have one thing to say to close, and that is to thank each of you for being here. Politicians get our names dragged through the mud. We get attacked for the positions we take. And the fact that each of you have come here tonight tells me you care. or you wouldn't come out here on a cold, windy night. And I can't thank you enough for voting with your feet to support America, to support Idaho, to support us as we represent you. It means more than I can express tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Horman. Last week, some of you may have attended the 75th anniversary of the Naval Reactors Facility out at the site. And what a great experience it was to see our military come in, the Navy folks, and then have them talk about the impact that this community has had on our national security for literally decades. I was so proud of our community. I can't tell you, just gave me chills to think about what a great place we live. I want you to know this as I leave you, is that I consider it an honor and a privilege to serve you. And please take every opportunity to communicate. I love this community. I love raising my family here. It's been a wonderful thing. So thank you.
One of the greatest honors we get each day in our job is to get calls from each of you and to be able to work towards resolving some of the issues that you face on a daily basis and hearing your voice. So just keep calling us and text us, send those emails, especially the ones that are telling us that you appreciate us. We need that occasionally, and I love those positive ones too, because they make your heart feel good and you're like, okay, all this negativity and all this hard stuff that we deal with, that makes it that much easier, and it's easier to know that there's so much kindness out there and good people who really care about the process. It's a hard job, but we're public servants. We're your servants. We represent you, and that's what we're here for, and we just appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
I'm going to express a collective thanks to these folks. This is a good example of what representative government in America should be. I thank you for your service. It's awesome. It's awesome to have you here. It's awesome to have them respond. This is what makes America great, and we're grateful that you came. Thank you so very much. Thanks. Okay.